My raft was now strong enough to bear any reasonable weight. My next care was what to load it with and how to preserve what I laid upon it from the surf of the sea. But I was not long considering this. I first laid all the planks or boards upon it that I could get, and having considered well what I most wanted, I first got 3 of the seamen's chests, which I had broken open and emptied, and lowered them down upon my raft. The first of these I filled with provision, viz. bread, rice, 3 Dutch cheeses, 5 pieces of dried goat's flesh, which we lived much upon, and a little remainder of European corn, which I had been laid by for some fowls, which we brought to sea with us, but the fowls were killed. Crusoe here makes a raft by using some long woods and tying them together with a rope. This raft helps him carrying the food and other provisions and getting them out of the ship to the shore. Crusoe spends several days working with a great deal of labor in hope to supply himself with the necessary items he needs in his life on the remote island. And it was after long searching that I found out the Carpenters Chest, which was indeed a very useful prize to me and much more valuable than a ship loading of gold would have been at that time. I got it down to my raft, even whole as it was, without losing time to look into it, for I knew in general what it contained. Crusoe continues collecting the important items he needs in his life on the desolate island. When he finds the Carpenter's Chest, he becomes very glad because he knows very well that on this remote island he needs carpenting equipments. For him, these equipments are useful and more valuable than gold itself. My next care was for some ammunition and arms. There were 2 very good fowling pieces in the great cabin, and 2 pistols. These I secured first with some powder horns and a small bag of shot, and 2 old rusty swords. I knew there were 3 barrels of powder in the ship, but knew not where our gunner had stowed them. But with much search I found them, 2 of them dry and good, the 3rd had taken water. Those 2 I got to my raft with the arms. To be alone in a remote place means that you need to protect yourself. This is what Crusoe thinks of. Therefore he supplies himself with some weapons and of course ammunitions he finds in the ship. Page 14. My next work was to view the country and seek a proper place for my habitation and where to store my goods to secure them from whatever might happen. Where I was I yet knew not, whether on the continent or an island, whether inhabited or not inhabited, whether in danger of wild beasts or not. There was a hill not above a mile from me, which rose up very steep and high, and which seemed to overtop some other hills, which lay as in a ridge from it northward. I took out 1 of the fowling pieces and 1 of the pistols and an horn of powder, and thus armed, supplying himself with the necessary items that he needs in his life, Crusoe finds that his next work is to view the place, or to have a look at the place he is in. He needs to know whether he is on a mainland or on an island, whether this place is inhabited or not inhabited, and to see if it is secure or not. Crusoe mounts the top of a hill to view the place, carrying with him his gun. I traveled for discovery up to the top of that hill, whereafter I had, with a great labor and difficulty, got to the top. I saw my fate to my great affliction, viz. that I was in an island environed everywhere with the sea, no land to be seen except some rocks which lay a great way off, and two small islands less than this which lay about 3 leagues to the west. Having a look at the place he is in, Crusoe realizes that he is on an island, since it is surrounded by water. This means that his hope of being saved is hopeless. The confrontation between man and nature. Daniel Defoe shows the confrontation between man and nature through the new life of Robinson Crusoe on the desolate island. The first days of Crusoe on the remote island show how he struggles to protect himself. Crusoe finds himself alone in the wild nature, and he has to confront its wild environment alone without the help of anyone. On the untouched island, Crusoe comforts himself and overcomes his deep grief caused by losing his comrades, who are all drowned into the wild sea. He has to accept his new life on this island. He is now away from home, his family, and his society. In other words, he is away from civilization or the civilized life. His new life on this dangerous island obliges him to work very hard to keep himself civilized. At the very beginning of being on the island, Crusoe works hard to remain a human and to preserve his social identity by collecting the necessary items he needs in his life here, on this remote island. Items such as food, drinks, clothes, and even guns help him resisting the wildness of nature. Crusoe does not surrender to the difficulties of nature. He brings all he needs to the shore by a raft he makes. This shows his great will to win the battle, a battle between him and nature.
Students, thank you for your listening.